Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to today's conversation on Gift of Healing TV. I'm Sara Jane, and I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host and two guests for this program. My co-host, Scott Holmes. Scott, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And our two guests, Ilene Dillon. Hi, Ilene. And Bradford Tilden. Great to have you all with us. It's brilliant. Now, our program is I'm just trying to think, where are we? The third in the series, the second in the series? Anyway, selfish or harder to manipulate? Because all of us were authors in I didn't become selfish, I became harder to manipulate. Now, what I did check before we started was Ilene was chapter 6 and Bradford chapter 13 within the book. So I'd like to say hi to both of you and start by saying, just share a little about yourselves and your chapter. So I hope you can remember a little about your chapter. I'm throwing this one at you. So we'll start with you, Bradford.
Oh, all right. Well, my name is Bradford Tilden. I'm an intuitive entrepreneur, best-selling author, composer, vibrational healer specializing in crystal sound and universal white time healing. And my business is Crystal Music Healing, and you can find me online. I was really excited to be part of this chapter. My personal story of development of my music and my faith in myself, my belief in myself and confidence in my creative I'm not going to be, my guides are saying creative genius as a composer and pianist was really stifled as a child and misdirected. My story is it starts off at a competition where I was really there because my piano teacher wanted me there. And I would much rather wanted to be composing, and she never really encouraged that. And so I internalized that as I projected her as a mother figure. And, you know, children want love from their parents. And so I wanted her love and approval. And that got wrapped up in my, her not really honoring my compositions and honoring the technicality of music as opposed to the expressive soul nature of what I wanted. And then the same thing in undergrad, my thesis advisor for composition, he really undermined my confidence in making the statement that a piece that I poured my heart and soul into wasn't thesis material, even though it moved other people to tears when they heard it. So I had all this conflict going until one day I stepped back and I just released it all. And I'm very grateful for the experience because it got me into, and indirectly, it got me into sound healing. And that's really what sound healing was, a healing journey for myself and restoring my faith and belief in my creative output. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. But the real message is like if you have a creative child, a talented child, consult them, ask them what they want, because I was never asked. There was a lot of opportunities that I didn't even know existed because I was never given the option. And I feel like my development suffered because of that. But I'm here now reclaiming my journey and not ever having it any other way. So that's in a real nutshell what my chapter is about and what I'm about. And so I'm just happy to be here.
Thank you. Ilene.
Wow, I was thinking, Bradford, as you were talking, my whole life was undermined like that, and it takes us a while to dig out. So I have been a psychotherapist for 53 years and a marriage and family counselor and a podcast host. I too am a best-selling author, a professional speaker. I think it would take me half a day to tell you all the things that I've done because I've had a nice long life so far. But in my chapter, I've had a long interest in manipulation, starting back when I was in the Girl Scouts in the 1950s, and I quit the Girl Scouts because I felt that the girls and their mothers too were so manipulative, and I couldn't stand being around it. And I took myself to the point of deciding I would never manipulate. And what my chapter, my story in the chapter is about, is that I discovered my very deep and wide manipulation when my first marriage ended. And I looked at my husband and said, oh my gosh, he used me. And I'm going to find out how people do that. And I'm going to figure it out. And it took me about 6 months to identify what I call the first law of manipulation, which is that it takes one to know one. And so it meant that I was manipulating, and then I had to figure out how I was manipulating, and it was that I did not believe I was lovable. And my husband told me he loved me, and he demonstrated it by marrying me. And I was using him to fill a need that I didn't think I could fill on my own, which is what manipulation is about. And I have since been teaching and helping people with manipulation, and I'm in process of writing a book that's provisionally entitled Ending Manipulation, and that's a good part of what I have in the chapter is some of the things that I've learned about manipulation, such as that we are all born manipulative, and we're all designed to outgrow manipulation, except, as I say tongue-in-cheek, most people have missed the memo.
Yep, 100% agree with you. all of us. Scott, some thoughts from you, because there's some amazing stuff been shared.
Yeah, we could ping pong back and forth with these two. But you're right, Eileen, we're born to manipulate because as children, we have to manipulate in order to get our needs met. And so whether it's being fed, being changed, being whatever the need is, we have to do that. I mean, you're so right. And as we get into a little bit later years and as toddlers is growing up, then we have to manipulate. If you're not getting the attention we need, we manipulate, we feign injury, we cry to get comforted, we do all of those things. And you're right about, we're supposed to outgrow that. But I find that, especially if you marry young, guilty as charged, that there is a lot of that you carry into the marriage, and you're looking for what you lack in that other person, that they fill that need for you. And it can be so manipulative both ways. Absolutely. Hopefully your needs are being met, but most of the time we miss the mark because we don't know how to communicate it. We don't know how to do it. We just know that subtly we arrange things to make sure that we're taken care of. So absolutely, I love your, and I've heard you on many stages telling people about this, and to be able to kind of draw the curtain, open it up, and for people to be able to see it, feel it, understand it, so they don't do it anymore. They don't use the manipulation. And the question I would have is, Bradford, as you, and I've known you for a number of years, and genius would be adequate when describing your ability to perform music and sound and the work that you're doing. How has not changing yourself, being true to yourself, and not changing all of those decisions you make, how has that changed you in your life, in your business life, in your personal life, about not bending because people aren't accepting, or you have to change it to make sure that mom or your aunts and uncles or your cousins or your greater family doesn't disapprove? So how has that changed for you?
Oh, I hope I can answer this adequately. I have this almost unfathomable inner strength and perseverance and need to be true to myself and my soul. And but what's interesting is, along with that propelled me to stay on path and not compromise and not allow myself to be pulled out or conformed to something that doesn't truly align with who I am and what I have to offer, was this companion of unworthiness, that I carried for so many years. I internalized it thinking that I wasn't good enough and that I didn't fully believe in what I was doing, even though I always only had positive feedback from the time I was young. And I'm not, I think I mentioned this in my chapter. I became hollow because my self-esteem, my value, my worth was a hollow scaffolding that outside people built around me, and I never had the opportunity or need to build it within myself. When I started emancipating myself from needing the external approval, I started building that up, and this was a journey of healing trauma and understand what it was. And all the while, I became full, and I became embodied, and then I saw and understood what it is that I actually have to offer. Like I was the last person to see it. So it's like I had the destination, and I still have the destination, and I had to catch up to myself. And I don't have any other words to describe it except how fortunate I am to have been blessed with a very strong intuition that I follow no matter what. I believe in what I experience and what I feel vibrationally, and I can feel in my physical body what's true, even if I don't. I was having struggles really understanding and comprehending the brilliance of what it was. It's like, you're like, I don't know why, but you give someone a diamond who's never seen a diamond before, and they have no idea what it is in their hands and what it's worth until they understand and discover and really comprehend what a diamond is. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but the ability to stay true to my path has been a default setting. And when I don't, I get sick, or I get depressed, or I things just don't work. And I just, in order for my health and my well-being, I have to return to my integrity of authenticity.
Thank you.
We're getting some distortion, but we can hear everything you're saying.
I'll scale down my energetic knobs.
It might be your hand movement, whatever it is. But this is real, folks. This is, and we work with energy. All of us work with energy. Yeah, whatever you're doing with your hands is affecting the mic.
It's you, girl.
You're so right. It's about believing in yourself. It is 100% about believing in yourself, listening to your intuition, your gut instinct, your heart. It is about listening to all of that. So that was one of our topics we were putting in here, believe in yourself. And so I'm going to come to you, Eileen, because I know we're going to come to a topic you brought up. And I'm now going to turn my mic off just in case it is me.
So you want me just to talk? Yes? Okay. I think, yes, it is about knowing yourself. But I think what gets in the way for most people is that they don't get support as they're growing up. Little kids at age 2, just like you were talking, Bradford, but I mean, hardly anybody gets it. And at the age of 2, little children start saying things like, "Me do it myself." Now, they're not capable of doing everything by themselves at 2, but between the ages of 3 and 4, they are. They can pull a blanket up over themselves. They can get water out of the refrigerator or out of the sink. They can ask for things, so they can do things for themselves. And at that point, we all need help to continue to build our ability to take responsibility for ourselves. And I have found that there are 3 reasons children don't get that support. One is that parents don't know. that children need the support, so they don't give it, they don't notice it. Two is that they think it's too much to ask of young children to take responsibility for themselves, even though they want to. And three, which is more profound, is that the parents themselves are what I call energy sappers or manipulators. They're still manipulative. And when you're manipulative, you don't want to be separate from other people. So parents don't want you to take the responsibility if you're a little kid, because then you're going to be separate from them. And that scares the daylights out of the parents. And so we don't get the help that we need. And our bodies continue to grow. And eventually we look like we're grown up. But I know that you have had experiences I have with people, and you go, how can an adult behave that way? Well, the answer is they're not adult. Their bodies are adult, but emotionally they're stuck before right around 3.5 to 4 years of age, emotionally. And so the trick for breaking through manipulation that I've discovered, and this ties in with what you've been saying, is you got to spend time by yourself. Manipulative people hate spending time by themselves. If they're alone, they've got something going. It's a phone, it's a Facebook, television, it's music. Never be alone, because then you're separate from other people, and that's terrifying. And so, as a therapist, I've helped people break out of manipulation over the years. And very often, people can't spend more than about 2 hours alone. And we start wherever they start. What you ultimately need to be able to do, is spend 3 or 4 days separate from other people, so that there's nobody there to listen to but your own self. And when you do that, you break through a barrier and discover that you're still alive after having been alone for that period of time. And that's when you go, oh, I can be alone and survive. And so it's not, I mean, it's simple. And I think life is more simple than we make it, but it still requires quite a bit of fortitude. Now, Bradford, you said, listen, I had this internal thing. I would get sick if I didn't stick with myself. So you didn't need a parent, apparently. Apparently, you didn't need a parent, because you had this feedback mechanism. I had two things. I had a huge amount of anger, and I had small children. And I needed to stay steady for my children.
Yeah.
And also, I think most of us are aware that when other people manipulate us and we notice it, sometimes not even when we don't notice it, it makes us angry. And so I began to understand, not only do I have a knot in my solar plexus when I'm being manipulated, but I get really pissed off because people are using my energy and they didn't ask me if that was okay. So I'll stop there. I
Well,
love this topic.
I love the topic too, and I wanted to. We talked about when children are younger and they don't get their needs met, and how that happens. What I'm coming up against, in it's probably our age, is so many people have their elderly parents. Okay, and that descending part where they have been independent and are now becoming dependent because their body, their physicality is failing, because they have, in order to get their needs met, they need help that they don't necessarily want to or have the facility to ask for help. What would you or how would you gauge that, or how would you change that or promote that within the family dynamic? Because it's usually the children that are taking care of mom and dad and seeing them deteriorate and are having to step in where maybe they aren't really welcome to have it being stepped into.
Well, I think part of the difficulty is that our parents have looked like they're grown-ups to us, and we've accepted them as grown-ups. And then as they get into their decline, we suddenly find the areas where they're not grown up. Like they don't take responsibility for asking for what they want. They don't allow other people to help them because they're not full as people. And so we're likely not to get it totally 100% uh, positive for us if we're the children of the parents, because we can't change other people, but we can change ourselves. And this is all about how do you help somebody else when they don't believe they need to be helped, when they want help, but they think there's something wrong with them if they accept it, all those kinds of things. And the key is that help that isn't asked for never works. So you ask the person, would you like my help? And now my parent may say, oh, I guess I have to. I'm older now. That's not a yes. If you don't get a yes, you don't give the help. And you let them struggle. And you can continue to love them. And you can recognize that they're struggling because they never learned to grow up all the way. And so you can come back later and say, I see you're having difficulty. Would you like my help now? I'm happy to help you. I'll tell you a funny thing. My stepmother, who died a few years ago at the age of 104, when she was about in her mid-80s, I was having a telephone conversation with her. And she started in on this story about something her brother had done. Mind you, she's about 86 years old by that point. Something her brother had done when they were children. And I stopped her and I said, Mom, I don't want to hear this story. I don't want to be a part of this because I know you have a heart problem and I know how upset you get from this story. And I don't want to be part of you having a heart attack. So I don't want to listen. And then I thought, well, and Mom, I actually am an expert in anger, and you don't actually have to continue being angry. If you're interested, I would love to help you in this anger. You don't have to keep carrying this. And she was quiet for quite a long time, and then she said, well, I've been angry all this time. I think I'll just go ahead and stay angry. And I thought, she is not so different from most people.
She reminds me of my dad, and my dad was having trouble getting around, and so he wanted to take a bath, and I said, okay, I'll be here, and I'm helping him, and I'm getting frustrated because he's just taking so long, and I took a step back, and I said, Dad, why does it take you so long? He said, because it's one of the few things I think I can do myself, and I want to be able to do this and feel this independence. And so I just stepped back a little further. And I said, if you need me, I'm right here. Take your time. So I was trying to do it on my schedule and not his. And I wasn't taking into account, I was caretaking, but not really giving care of what his needs were. And it took me to ask him about, because I was getting frustrated, why does it take you so long? And he said, because this is something that I can do myself. It might take me a lot longer, but I really, truly would like to do it myself. So it's that thought, that breath, that space that you give other people for them to realize, hey, I need help with this. I got everything else done, but I need help with this. And it really, truly affected our relationship after that, too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I have one more short story I want to say. I was visiting a man I dated 50 years before I was visiting him. He was in his 70s by that point, and I was in his home. He went to the trouble to make a fire, and to do so, he was having trouble with his legs. To do so, he had to get down on the floor on his hands and knees, and it was difficult for him to get up. And I offered to help him, and he said, no, I want to do it myself, just like your father was. And what I want to point out here is it was really difficult for me to watch this man struggle. It really was. And yet I knew for his own dignity, he needed to struggle.
Yep.
And that, I think, would be hard if you see your parent that you've revered or put on a pedestal, or they've always been ahead of you, and there they are struggling. And I love the way you handle that with your dad.
Thank you.
I think we've got to realize is they have become the child. And so bringing it back to sort of the stories, and obviously for you, Bradford, you were very much being guided by others rather than being allowed to sort of and asked what was right for you. And it's really understanding that, isn't it? For all of us, it's for the adults with their children, asking them, but it's also the adults with their adult parents, asking them. But I am going to say one thing. My mother's reaction is, well, if you love me, you'd know what I want. Oh, thank you, Mother. We're not, and I've said to her so many times, we're not mind readers. And I think this is the important thing here is none of us are mind readers. We get a sense of things, but if we want to ask people to ask us, if we want people to listen to us, it's really important. So obviously, yes, I've read your story, Bradford, and you've just shared parts of it here. How did you find it going into that aspect of starting to tell people, actually, this is what I want? Because that's the important thing, stopping the manipulation.
Well, I wish I had more inspiring advice, but I just kind of avoided the people and I did what I did. I mean, I when I moved to California after undergrad, the first thing out of my mom's mouth every time we talked on the phone was, when I had a gig or something, she's like, well, how much money did you make? How much money did you make? And she prioritized that over everything else. And it kind of distanced me from being willing to share what was going on in my life, because she wasn't asking me the questions that I wanted her to ask, that I felt like she was really, cared about how I was doing. In hindsight, I realized that was her language of making sure I was okay and being able to support myself. But, and then she would just drift off into her own thing with talking about the dog or whatever, which she always does. You have to, give her like 5 minutes to download whatever she needs to, the incidental information. But really, it was just, it was really myself. I had to struggle. I had to say, no, I really want to do this, and I had to abandon the notions. I remember the day that I gave up the dream of being a concert pianist, or because I didn't like that feeling of that limelight, of that expectation, of that pressure. It didn't feel right to me. Now I play the piano as my own personal therapy, and I share it because I want to, not because I feel like I'm supposed to. And I was conditioned to feel like I was supposed to. Even my aunt today, I wish you would do something with your piano music. Well, that's nice, but I am, but not to the level of your expectations, right? So I had to get really clear on separating other people's expectations from my own. And it was surprising at first to realize that we didn't share the same expectations, because my trajectory is so entwined with theirs. And that extraction was a lot of self-work and self-discovery. And yeah, it was a process, but it was very, very rewarding. But never give up the dream and the desire of the piano, but alter my approach and my viewpoint of it. The piano, for example, you can take that as any aspect of your life. Like you might still want to do it, but not in the way that you thought you were supposed to, or that the thought implant of how you were supposed to do something. Right? You can still paint and be, successful within your own self, and not necessarily have the commercial success that maybe you didn't want in the first place, because you're inner reasoning wasn't with that objective in mind. That helps.
No,
Yeah.
100% agree with that. And I think we're becoming aware of it. It's now been given a title of neurodiversity, which is a blanket title. And people think about different things differently. People have different awarenesses of things. And there is so much creativity that I actually think comes from those differences, being wired differently. Because we may not understand what people consider to be normal. And to be perfectly honest, I think I haven't been diagnosed. My youngest sister has. She's got dyslexia, ADHD, autism spectrum, complicated PTSD. She's been diagnosed at the age of 55. So she's known that, had that diagnosis for about 5 years now. But I have actually got, I'm sure, aspects of dyslexia. I failed English language because I could never, ever, ever get the hang of grammar. And I still can't. You start talking in grammar terms, and I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. But I can still write, I can still read, I can still speak, and mostly it's probably quite sensible. Don't have to have the rules and regulations behind things. And I was very lucky to obviously be brought up in a family where they spoke relatively well. So, you know, it's not a whole load of bad language and distorted terms, etc. But I think it's being true to who you are. And I think because it is becoming more aware these days about the differences, the different wiring, that there is more acceptance. But it's just being aware that actually how much creativity is within that, because we haven't got a box. We don't fit in that box of normal. You know, to be able to do what you do, Bradford, isn't normal. But it's your normal. And that's the important thing. Scott, you know, your life has been your normal and your abilities are your normal. And the same with you, Ilene. We're all different. We're all unique. And the people and the manipulation side of things, and yes, we're all capable of doing it. I've totally understood that about myself. People pleasing is actually a form of manipulation, because you're always trying to second guess what other people want, and you're telling them, I'm going to do this for you. You're not asking them, you're telling them. But you're just trying to please people. It's that failure to ask. I think with everything that we've all mentioned here, it's that failure to ask, but with my mother, it's that failure to ask. Please ask if you want help, because we aren't mind readers. If people don't ask us, and if we don't speak up and find our voice. Now, obviously, by working with sound, which you do, which I do, it is, and for all of us, though, it's about finding our voice. To say no to others, to say yes to ourselves, but to listen to others. So it's one of these and two of thes. And as they say, are we listening to others as well? So Scott, you have some thoughts?
I want to pick up on creativity. So if you ask any 3 or 4 year old, are they a good artist? They're going to tell you absolutely. If you're going to ask them if they can dance, absolutely. If you're going to ask them if they can sing, absolutely. That gets drummed out. Unless you're in the top 10% of whatever that is, it's abandoned. And what I find in dealing with clients is that when they're lost, they lose that creativity, that part of themselves that creates. They do not see themselves as a creator anymore. And so finding joy in the creativity. And I asked them, what brings you joy? What do you mean? Well, I like to walk in the park. Okay. And do you do anything creatively? Well, no. I used to like to, right? When you're a teenager and you're growing up and you're spending all that time in your room by yourself, you're doodling, you're painting, you're doing all those things, and then it all goes away and responsibilities come down the line. So I asked them, why don't you paint now? You're not in competition with anybody except for yourself to do a little better every day. Whether it's to write, we've all written. The first time I wrote in a collaboration, it scared me to death. I didn't think, from the time I was a teenager, I wanted to write. I wanted to be an author. And the first time I wrote at the age of 60, it scared me to death because I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I'd be able to put the words together. I didn't think that I would be able to paint the picture for people so they could feel it, see it, hear it. Because for me, there's no greater creation than taking a pen and paper and getting a feeling out of it. It becomes ethereal in that respect. So that creation aspect that we all have within us, that we all get back to. The three of you are incredibly creative people, motivated to be able to share, to be able to create. You're creating words, you're creating these sessions. How has that creativity changed or molded your life, Ilene?
Mm-hmm. I would like to take just a little back step to talk about something that's been said here before I answer that. Going back to what you said, Sarah, about your mother saying you should know. And I think that is so typical of manipulative relationships, both the people who are attempting to manipulate and those who think of themselves as the victim. Remember, it takes one to know one, so we're actually both manipulative. And we come, as we're growing up, when this creativity, when our sense of self is taken from us or erodes, we do what I learned as we make survival contracts. Listen, I'm normally a loud kid, but Scott, I know you don't like loudness, so I'll give that part of myself up so that you will continue to love me enough that I can grow up. That's a survival contract. And so what stood out to me that I just want to say is based on my having made tons of survival contracts in my childhood, I didn't know it was possible for me to know myself. And I think that's one of the important things that we need to look at now as we're talking, that people can see or learn from us, is that every one of us can get back to that 3 or 4 year old. Every one of us has our own creativity. Every one of us has our spark. And most likely we have given it away willingly at the time, thinking that we had to do that in order to make it to adulthood. So I just want to say that. Now, how has creativity, my writing ability woke up in 11th grade. I had a teacher who was Mrs. Bain was her name, and she sparked something in me and ended up writing this story called Dear God, Love Kevin. And it was a gruesome, awful story about two little boys who'd been taken off to the wilderness by their father who died, and they were trapped, and they ended up they became cannibals in this story, right?
Wow.
And my father was horrified because my teacher put it in the school literary magazine. Okay. And that was the first time I even encountered activity. And I felt very plebeian. I was very good at doing laundry and ironing and cooking and washing dishes and all those things, which my family emphasized. And I didn't think of myself as creative, and I didn't think I was very smart. But at age 16, my sister said, "What do you think you're going to do when you grow up?" And I said, "I think I'm going to write." And she said, "What are you going to write about?" And I said, "Life, but I think I have to live some of it first." Well, I didn't start writing again until I was in my late 30s, when somebody in a spiritualist church pointed out to me that I had said I was going to write and I needed to start writing a little bit each day. And like you, Scott, when I started, I was terrified because my father was very judgmental, and I figured I put my words on the paper, I'm going to be criticized. So I gave myself permission to put it on the paper, put it in a file drawer, and never show it to anybody if I didn't want to, just to get it out of me. That's how I started. What difference has it made today in my 80s? I can sit down. We've all of us have been doing these chapters in books. I basically submit my first draft. Because what happens for me when I get creative, and I'm sure this happens for you guys now too, all of you, is I just, okay, what do I want to write about? I ask for help, and it's like the old linotype machine. The words just drop into a little tray as I'm writing. It's not all me that does it. And how does it change my life? It's made me very much more confident. It's left me feeling happier. It's left me believing that I matter. And actually, it's taken me all the way to the point where I am now dedicating the end of my life to teaching all the stuff that I have learned over the last 50 years about emotions and working with life and so forth. In other words, it's given me purpose.
Mm, beautiful. Bradford, I asked the same question of you. You're one of the most creative people I know, and you live in that with that 24/7. So how has that changed you and how you view life, how you encounter the rest of the world?
So, first of all, thank you, Eileen, for that beautiful response. And for me, I'm just getting emotional, like thinking about it. My heart's desire is to create and to express and to inspire and to elevate other people through the whatever means of creative expression I choose to employ, or whatever means will most resonate with the person or the people. And it's I don't know a time in my life where I wasn't creative. And I was very fortunate to, despite the struggles and stuff, to have my creativity fostered, even though I was discouraged from believing I could make a living supporting myself through my creative endeavors, which I ultimately dismissed that falsity and embraced my creativity. And I found that the levels of authenticity in the creativity really affect the reception of the other party. I
Yes.
speak now of the sound healing. That what I do is very left field, but it's very high vibrational, and people that are into it are into it. And it took me a long time to give myself permission to actually create in the moment, like 100%, give myself 100% and not self-censor myself. So I got so much creativity going all the time that self-censorship was something that I was conditioned. Like my father used to tell me to be quiet, shh, like, and to really claim my space and claim my fullest and shine my light is something that my creativity has evolved the more I've given myself permission to be more fully who I am. And that evolution has led to a greater positive impact in the people, like a collective field of inspiration, so to speak. And it's self-perpetuating. It's like a positive feedback loop. It's helping me to abandon or just heal any vestiges of insecurity, self-doubt that I might have had. My creativity is my healing journey. I've certainly healed and continue to heal through my creativity. And I think that that's true for pretty much everyone, especially artists. Like the most profound art comes from the most tormented soul. But that's an old narrative. It doesn't have to be. Like the most profound art can be from one of the most aligned souls, right? The most authentic soul. And so my quest in this lifetime is creative expression, but authentic creative expression and what that means. And we each have such a profoundly unique soul and soul history and journey of all of our lifetimes and experiences on this planet and beyond. And to have that soul be expressed through the various means that the person chooses will just bring such diversity and inspiration and beauty to the world. And that's really the space that I'm living in, is embracing this joyful creative expression.
And it's
That's
so
a joyful statement that I can take home and keep in my heart for a while. Thank you.
Mm.
yeah, and thank you to both of you. Now we have got a little bit of time left, and we have got another topic, because I think with the creativity we are saying it's be yourself. Just let yourself be yourself. But Ilene, you said the difference between life based on personality or principle. Can you just
Yes.
give us a little snippet?
If I can. This was something that was taught to me, and it has made such a profound difference in my life. Most of us, particularly if we've continued to be manipulative, we don't live on the basis of principle. We live on personality. Oh, you're my sister-in-law. You're my husband. You're my friend. And so for you, I'm going to do something I wouldn't do for anybody else. That's personality. And when I was taught, a principle is, imagine yourself going out into the woods on a hike one day, and you stop under this huge tree, and the tree is about to drop a limb that day. The tree does not look down and go, oh, Bradford, oh, Scott, oh, Jane, Sara Jane, it's you. I won't drop my limb. The tree is dropping its limb that day. If you're there, the limb gets dropped. And so what was pointed out to me is that we live out of harmony with nature because nature operates on the basis of principle. If that's what's happening today, it doesn't matter who's standing underneath, the tree's going to drop its limb. And the more we can bring our lives into harmony with principle, the better they run. And especially when you have lived on the basis of manipulation, you give up principle. And I'm just horrified at, and have been for a number of years. Our courts have given up principle. They'll say you have to pay this fine, and then they don't follow up on it. They don't follow their principle. Politics doesn't follow principle. Business people don't follow principle. We don't follow principle in our lives. It's like we've given up principle, and our lives are a lot more difficult as a result. And when I was taught this, which was probably more than 40 years ago, you have to kind of decide, because if I say, the way you determine principle is to say, Bradford, if you ask me if you can borrow my car, if I'm willing to let everybody who asks me to borrow my car, if I'm willing to let everybody borrow my car, then I can lend you my car, because that will be on principle. But if I do it because I think you're a special person in my life, that's not living on principle, and I'll end up in a mess. Quick story. My husband was a neurosurgeon. And he, toward the end of his career, he started doing medical legal work. He was a witness for malpractice cases. And a woman who was a nurse had started him in that business. And he had a contract with her that was different than what he had with all the other people he worked with in this business. He didn't have a written contract. He charged her less. and he accepted a lot of cases that he might not otherwise have accepted. Well, many years ago, he raised his rates. She called him at home on a Sunday and told him he wasn't worth it. He couldn't raise his rates. Now, this is a neurosurgeon we're talking to here. And what I learned from being married to a neurosurgeon is people don't talk to neurosurgeons that way. And it really made him angry, right? And he came to me and he said, "Why is she talking to me this way?" And I said, "Well, actually, I think it's because you're living in personality with her, not principle. You're treating her differently than all the other people you do this work for. And as long as you treat her differently, she's going to treat you this way." Well, he was concerned about whether he'd have enough money and all this, so he put it off until she did something like that 2 or 3 more times. And he really got fed up with it. And I said to him, "Listen, because you charge her, because you get paid less by her, you could talk to some other people you do this work for. How many cases would it take you to make up for the 17 that she has? How many cases?" And he said, "Maybe about 5. I said, "Do you think the other people you work with, you could find 5 with them by asking them?" He said, "Yes." And he was angry enough finally to go and ask them. He got 6 cases, not 5, and he dropped her. And of course, she told him he was wrong and he wouldn't survive and so forth. Very manipulative kind of response. But the bottom line was, as soon as he was in principle, he actually started making more money. He had more time for himself because he wasn't working on these penny ante little cases that didn't pay him very much. And he was a happier person. And that's true for any of us. And I bring up the neurosurgeon part of him. I'm sure he would be happy to share this, even though it wasn't fun for him, because it doesn't matter your position in life or who you think you are or how smart you are or anything like that. If you're in personality, your in personality is not going to work very well.
So your two tutors were definitely in personality, weren't they, Bradford?
Yeah. Yeah. But that was an amazing story, Eileen. Thank you so much. Wow. I took a lot out of that.
Good. Thank you.
Thank
So
you. Yeah, we're coming close to the end. So, Scott, what did you want to ask?
No, I just wanted to piggyback on that and just say, Eileen, I've seen it. I work for a city government, and it's personality over process. In other words, everyone gets treated differently depending on their relationships, on their position, everything else, and there is no set standard. So therefore, majority of the people get screwed, and a few people benefit. And I've always had a problem with that because I try, much like yourself in life, it's about boundaries. That's about keeping and maintaining that integrity. And you try to do that throughout the course I do anyway, the course of my life, so that I don't have to look back behind me and see, any bridges that were burned. Sarah.
At the beginning, let me just say, at the beginning, when you start living by principle instead of personality, it can feel very difficult. But the more you do it, the easier it is. And all those people that complicate your life, they just drop out because their energy doesn't match with yours anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So, any final words before we actually close down? So, Bradford, we'll come to you first. Any thoughts? Anything we haven't touched on you'd like to actually share?
Okay, yeah. We're all unique. We're all unique divine beings of love and light, and we all have a unique contribution, a creative contribution. And what I recommend is whatever creative activity brings you the most joy is your soul's true alignment, whatever that is. and aligning with joy and your passion. It excites your cells, it raises your energy, it strengthens your immune system. It becomes, when you embody your joy through a creative expression, you're essentially living your purpose. Your purpose, not your purpose as a parent or a spouse or a child, your purpose. And so if you're in doubt, just try things, try new things. If you don't know off the top of your head what it is, but everyone has come with a contribution through their living their truth through creative expression. I fully believe that. And so I'll leave with that.
Bless you. Thank you. I'm going to come to you, Scott.
Thank you for this discussion. You, the two of you have been a revelation as always. And I hope that anyone watching this can feel and understand how much talent there is out there, that if you have questions, these people are here to answer them. They have unique gifts. And sometimes, as with a client yesterday, it's as simple as, gee, I never thought of it that way. And that's all it takes sometimes. Miss Ilene.
Well, I had another thing in mind, but something just popped into my head. I was in a meditation group one time, and the leader, who was a medium, said, think of a talent that you have. And I could not think of a single talent that I had. This was close to 50 years ago. And so I kept thinking, because we were meditating as a group, and I finally realized that I have a talent for cooking. Because even if I burn things, I still think I can cook. And so I accepted that. And my friend who was running the group said, a talent is something that that you do, and other people say to you, oh, you do that so wonderfully. I'm just so impressed. And you go, oh, anybody could do this. That's a talent. And I love that definition. And doing talents relieves loneliness. It improves our health, like you were saying, Bradford. Using our talent, and you can use it in any field. I use my talent as a psychotherapist. I don't do psychotherapy the way anybody else I know who does psychotherapy, because I decided to do it my way, and it's really powerful. And I'm still working at the age of 82 because people really still get a benefit from it. So, don't limit yourself in terms of talents and utilizing them, or what creativity is, or can you use it in any area of your life? The answer is yes.
100%. Do it your way. In fact, my article that I wrote for my website was sort of, I do it my way. It's time you did it your way. So absolutely perfect way to finish this. Mylene, thank you very much for being here. I know you've kept fairly quiet, but that's fine. It was lovely to have you here. I have put both Bradford's and Eileen's websites into the chat there. So if you want to connect with them, and if you're watching the video on YouTube, you will find it under that as well. So sort of, please, if you want to connect with them, you'll also find mine and Scott's, but I haven't put those in the chat. Put those under the website. But if you, but thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to
Thank you.
Oh no, this has been brilliant. I loved getting everybody together for the book, and I am loving doing these programs because there is so much wisdom sort of from so many different perspectives that are coming out in this. So thank you to each and every one of you. It is a real pleasure. Next week, I am being joined, and it's actually going to be 7:30 in the morning for me because my guest is in India. So it'll be midday for him, Dr. Beniram Koshe, and he's going to be Health is in Your Hands. So, and to be perfectly honest, of course it is. It's up to us to take care of ourselves. Simply put, but I'm sure he will go considerably more information than that. Take care, be safe, stay well. Thank you to each and every one of you.
Yeah.
And I'll be in touch
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye.
Bye.